This is the DoughRoller Money Podcast, episode number 183. My name is Rob Berger. I'm the founder of DoughRoller.net and the host of this podcast. Today, we're going to talk to Scott Keyes, and he's going to tell us exactly how he and his girlfriend traveled the world, 21 flights, 13 countries, for free. Every single flight was free. 95% of their hotel stays were free. Today, he's going to tell us how they did it. More importantly, he's going to tell us how we can do it too.
Welcome to the DoughRoller Podcast, where the best thing money can buy is financial freedom. We help you make more, spend less, and invest the rest. And now your host, Rob Berger.
Whether you're just starting out, buried under a mountain of debt, or well on your way to financial freedom, this is the podcast to help you take your finances to the next level. Hey everybody, hope you're having a great day. So this is episode 183, right? In episode 182, I talked about the asset class swap, as I called it, and I got a lot of feedback from that episode. If you haven't listened to it, you can check it out, DoughRoller.net/podcast 182. By the way, at the start of that, I kind of, talked about how I'd finally figured out how to produce a podcast and publish it without publishing related show notes. Well, that was a big fail. So I actually have show notes for that episode. So you can go to DoughRoller.net/podcast 182. And I guess I'm back to the drawing board on that one. But a couple of things. First, folks wrote in with some alternatives to the term I was using, asset class swap, and I liked them better, both actually. One was asset class shuffle. That's pretty good. The other one was asset class arbitrage, which I think, it's not exactly arbitrage, but I think I like that probably the best, maybe because it's got an air of sophistication. But the other kind of comments I received were two of note. One was, someone said this is a terrible idea because I get crushed with taxes, because you sell a fund and you have to pay capital gains tax on any of your gains. And that's certainly a very important consideration, although in my case, these were mutual funds held in a retirement account, and it involved REITs, as you know if you've listened to episode 182, and I would never own a REIT in a taxable account. Honestly, if all I had were taxable accounts, I doubt I'd own a REIT, because the taxes would just clobber you. So yeah, these were in retirement accounts, so didn't have to worry about the tax implications, but obviously a very important consideration, particularly as you maybe look to do an asset class arbitrage or shuffle or swap with other types of investments. And that gets me to the sort of the second substantive comment, and that was, hey, this is great. What other asset classes are out there where we can do this? REITs were the one that really struck me. I don't do this very often. It really has to get to what I think is an extreme mispricing, an extreme valuation. And that doesn't happen very often. And, I'm not looking to, because the PE of an asset class goes to 20 or something, and historically it's 15, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to make any changes in that situation. And we can kind of see it in the market as it exists today, which, people have been talking about the market being overvalued. Well, they've been talking about it for years, being overvalued. And that can happen just because it's, the PE or the price to book or whatever metric you want to use is well above the average, whether you want to use Shiller's, 10-year PE or whatever, doesn't tell you what the stock market's going to do in the short term or even in the next year or two. Ultimately, eventually, I think, things tend to revert to the mean, but how they do that and when they do that are anyone's guess. So I really only do this in what I view as extreme cases, and I think the U.S. REITs were at an extreme valuation, particularly as compared to international REITs. So, but even then, it doesn't tell you what their prices are going to do in the short term. So in any event, I don't have any other asset classes at the moment where I'm doing this. I mean, I'm happy to let some of my foreign investments creep up a little bit in terms of my asset allocation, as I mentioned in episode 182. But beyond that, I don't see any, at least that I'm taking advantage of. If you do, I'd love to hear about it. Let me know. Shoot me an email, dr@doughroller.net. Okay, on to the topic today, and that is free travel, and who doesn't want to travel the world for free? I have on the show Scott Keyes. He is a world traveler. He's traveled for free. As I mentioned at the top of the show, he and his girlfriend took effectively around the world trip over a couple of months, 21 flights, all free. I think you have to pay taxes with flights. You can't avoid those, but the flight itself was free. They stayed in hotels, some very nice hotels. 95% of their hotels were free. He's written some books about it, which you'll hear during the interview. But in any event, he's going to walk us through exactly how he did it. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, I appreciate you taking the time to be with us. So honestly, I don't remember how I found you. I was on the internet and I just found this guy that said he flies a lot for free. And so that caught my attention. I saw that you wrote a book. And so I wanted to bring you on the show to hear how you do it. Why don't you start by just telling everybody a little bit about who you are?
Sure. So I am a big travel enthusiast, as you probably could have guessed. And I just got back from a 2-month worldwide trip with my girlfriend. We took 21 flights around the world, went to 13 different countries, everywhere from the volcanoes of Nicaragua to beer halls in Prague to the Parthenon in Greece and beyond. And the interesting thing about this trip is we wanted to make a point of doing it essentially all for free. You know, every single one of our flights, 95% of our hotel rooms ended up being for free. And, you know, it's what let us do a trip like this, whereas, you know, we're not made of money. We're not millionaires. We wouldn't be able to afford a dream trip like this otherwise. And so figuring out these strategies is what enabled us to take a trip like this.
How did you, we obviously want to hear about how you did that.
Yeah.
But how did you get started into this sort of miles game, traveling for free thing? How did it begin?
Yeah, slowly but surely. You know, they say Rome wasn't built in a day. This is about 5 years ago or so. I just gotten out of college, had a small piggy bank of miles, and started realizing, like, you know, I want to make sure I'm getting the most value out of these. You know, I've got like 50,000 miles in my American Airlines account. I want to make sure that I'm not just wasting it. And so I started doing a little research online, finding these, you know, there's this whole world out there, message boards and forums of other people in this frequent flyer world who want to try to help you get the most value out of your miles as possible. So I started to realize, you know, booking a flight from Washington, D.C., where I was living, back home to Ohio, probably not going to be the best use of my miles. That would be like 25,000 round trip just to fly from D.C. to Ohio. But I realized after a little bit of research, for just 5,000 miles more, for 30,000 miles, I could fly from DC all the way to the Galapagos Islands and back. So, wow, you know, that seems like really good value. And especially considering the ticket would have cost $1,600. So, you know, I took my miles, went ahead and booked that flight, still kind of with that skeptic heart, anticipating, oh, you know, something's going to be wrong here. They're going to charge me a ton of fees. Like there's no way that this will actually pan out. And then when I actually took the flight, made it back home safe, and, you know, only spent 30,000 miles and about $45 in taxes and fees, I was a convert. I was a believer. And then slowly but surely started to look into, you know, how can I get more miles? How can I get them quickly and easily? And how can I keep taking more free flights like this? And you know, the rest has been history.
Yeah. So you said you started with 50,000 miles. Where did those come from?
Those came just from flying back and forth from college. You know, I grew up in Ohio. My folks are here, but then I went to school out in California. So twice a year, you know, 3 times max, I was flying to and from California. So in about four years or so, I ended up amassing 50,000 miles, which on the one hand, you know, was a decent chunk of miles. Like, it let me fly for free to the Galapagos and back and still have a lot left over. On the other hand, what I've realized since then is how incredibly difficult it is to amass those miles when you're actually flying them. You know, you get 1 mile for every mile you fly and everything, versus amassing those miles from, for instance, credit card sign-up bonuses, where I can just sign up for one credit card from American Airlines and get the same number of miles that it took me 4 years of flying cross-country 2 or 3 times a year to get. So, you know, that it was just very stark in my mind. Wow, you know, I can spend 4 years flying 15 cross-country flights, or I can just sign up for this one credit card and get the exact same miles in the end.
So were the Galapagos Islands amazing?
Oh, one of the best vacations I've ever taken. You know, I tell people that that's the trip where I've been most tempted to just take my return ticket and, just tear it in half and just set up a new life down there. Is really, really incredible.
Yeah. How long were you there?
About a week, I think. It might have been 8 days, but yeah, got to go to a couple different islands. Some incredible snorkeling there. That in addition to all the tropical fish and everything, they have a ton of sea lions. That as soon as you get in the water, they really like. I thought it was a farce that they play with you. I thought, people are just anthropomorphizing them. No. As soon as you get in the water, they just come and swim right up to you, get within about a hair's breadth, and then circle around. And come back and swim right up to you again. It's an unbelievable.
Was that a bit unnerving at first?
A little bit, but they just look so friendly and fun. If that had been a hammerhead shark or something, I felt a little bit. But yeah, it was a great experience.
Okay, so you have this great experience. You spend some of your miles. So how do you go about then? I mean, maybe you can walk us through your approach to credit cards. If that's the best and easiest way to build up miles, how do you go about doing it?
Yeah, so there are a couple pieces of advice that I give to folks, especially folks who are starting out. One is start out slow. In any flying for free is much like any other hobby that you're not going to become an expert overnight. You need to practice a little bit, and you need to sort of do it for yourself and see for yourself that these efforts are worth it. If you play it right, it's not a scam. And that you can actually come out well ahead. But, I'm not going to advise people to go out and just open up 10 credit cards overnight because, if you had told Scott Keyes in 2010 that was a good idea, I would have laughed in your face and said, you're crazy. So what I advise folks is to, find one card that has a really good sign-up bonus right now. That's the main thing that I advise people to look at is just the sign-up bonus. Almost every card offers, 1 mile per dollar spent. Maybe you get 2 miles if you are at a office supply store or restaurant or something. Go ahead and ignore all that. Just focus on the sign-up bonus. Now, for instance, with American Airlines, they usually have cards that give you 50,000 miles once you sign up and spend some amount of money in the first 3 months, usually $1,000, $2,000, something like that. So just sign up. I recommend just look at that big sign up bonus. Only go for a card that has a large sign up bonus, 50,000 miles at least. And then just make sure you're hitting that spending threshold, putting all your, when you go out to a restaurant, go out and get groceries, make sure you're always paying with your credit card. So you hit that. And then once you get those 50,000 miles, figure out where's somewhere that you'd really like to use them. Maybe taking that dream trip to Rome, maybe flying down to Brazil, somewhere where you can use those miles. And then once you get back from that trip and realize, wow, that wasn't so difficult. I opened up a card. My credit score is still great. I was able to get the miles. That wasn't a scam. I was able to use the miles, and that wasn't a scam. And here I am, a couple $1,000s richer for not having paid out of pocket for that flight. And then start to ramp things up a little bit, say, maybe at that point you're comfortable signing up for a second one. But in all things, I recommend moderation and just going at it slowly, so you make sure that you're comfortable with it and not going out of your comfort zone.
So for a trip like to Rome, you mentioned Rome just as one option. How many miles does it typically take to get a free flight, round trip flight to a place like Rome?
It depends on the carrier. So if I'll just talk about American Airlines, for instance. I just took a flight from the U.S. to Europe, and that's if you're flying outside of the peak travel time to Europe, which is between mid-May and mid-October, it's only 40,000 miles round trip from the U.S. to Europe. If you're flying during those peak summer months, which I believe is, again, May 15th to October 15th, you're going to pay 60,000 round trip. And if you split the difference, say you fly in the beginning of May and fly home in the end of May, you're going to pay 20,000 to get there and then 30,000 to get back. So it'd be 50,000 round trip.
Do you ever, when you focus on the sign-up bonuses, I know some cards, like you mentioned, will give you miles for a specific airline, like American or Southwest or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess all the airlines have their form of a credit card that will give you bonus miles. But then there are cards, and Venture is one from Capital One that I can think of. Barclay Card has one that are pretty rich rewards, and the miles aren't specific to an airline. Right?
Yeah.
You can use the miles to offset any travel charges you want.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Are there pros and cons to one versus the other?
There are some pros and cons. And I've done ones like the Capital One card, and they can be useful. The reason why I don't like them more is the amount of value that you can get out of them is pretty fixed, in the sense that because the way the Capital One card works is you get, they say you get 50,000 miles or something, but what it actually works out to is I think each mile is worth a penny towards airfare on any flight. So the benefit is you can use that on any flight. There are no blackout dates, or there's no capacity controls in terms of seats on a plane that are made available as an award. But at the same time, if a flight is really expensive, then it might not even cover it. If say you would need to fly New York to LA and it costs $600, even 50,000 miles is not going to cover that. Whereas with American Airlines, for a round trip domestic flight, it's only 25,000 miles.
Gotcha.
So it can be good in the sense like you're going to have much more availability. But the reason why I tend not to love the Capital One card and other ones like that is they're essentially a cashback card, but a cashback card that you can only use on travel. So I'm saying, if you're going to go that route, you might as well just go get a cashback card that gives you 2% cashback in general, and you can use that cash on flights if you want, but you could also use it on groceries or movie tickets or anything else. The reason why I like the mileage cards from American or Southwest or wherever is because you can, if you play your cards right, you can get really good value out of them. For example, again, going back to the Galapagos flight, I paid 30,000 miles for that. But if I had paid out of pocket for that ticket, it would have been $1,600. So, that was 30,000 American miles versus it would have been 160,000 Capital One points. So the only other benefit, though, that to be aware of for the Capital One card and other ones like that is you do get frequent flyer miles for those flights, if that makes a difference to you. So because you're essentially paying with cash, you still get to accrue frequent flyer miles for the miles you fly on that flight. Whereas when I book an award seat with United, I'm paying them miles to use it, but I don't get to accumulate any miles from that flight.
Right. You alluded to your credit score a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Have you seen your credit score take a hit from all the credit card apps? And I guess kind of related to that, do you monitor your score regularly, and how do you do that?
I absolutely do monitor my score. And this is one of the things I think that surprised me the most of getting into this hobby was I was under the impression, which, is not a bad impression, but I had long believed that basically having a number of credit cards is really bad for your credit score. And the reason why I was under that impression is because most people who tend to have a lot of credit cards are people who are opening up a new one in order to pay off an old one. People who are not handling their credit responsibly, and people are just trying to stay afloat. The thing that I've realized then from getting into this hobby, going slow and opening up one card at a time, and always and just following a couple important rules with my credit, and that's always treating a credit card like a debit card, never spending money I don't have, always paying off my balance in full at the end of every month, and keeping a vigilant eye on my credit score. My credit score has gone from, decent, fine when I first started, just as any kid who just get out of college, you're not going to have a bad credit score, but not a tremendous credit score, to incredibly high, excellent credit score at this point. And the reason why is because every card that I open up, when I'm paying off my balance in full each month, I'm showing my credit worthiness because I put charges on the card and then I pay them off. I'm showing each month, I'm a credit worthy customer. I'm good at handling it. I don't have any late payments on my score, and I don't have any delinquencies or bankruptcies or anything like that. In addition, one of the main ways in which your credit score is calculated is the amount of balance, the amount of charges that you have on your card in the numerator divided by the amount of credit you have available to your name. So, I'll give you an example. Say you have one credit card that has a $5,000 credit line and you've spent $500 in charges there. It's 10%. You're utilizing 10% of your credit right there. Decent, not great, not awful. But if I say I have 10 cards that each have $5,000 credit line on them, but I only have $500 in charges at the moment, that's only 1% credit utilization. So my score is going to be a lot higher because I'm showing, I have a ton of credit to my name at this point from all the credit cards, but I'm using very little of it. So I think that's actually really been counterintuitive to me, is that by opening up all these cards and by using them responsibly, but using them frequently and doing this frequent flyer game, I've actually really improved my credit score from what it was, and made it really tip top in general. So it'll be great when, say, in the next few years, if I'm looking to buy a house or something, I'll be able to pay a much lower interest rate because I've been improved my credit score, because it's been doing well, than I would have otherwise.
What tool do you use to keep track of your credit score?
There are two main ones that I like best. It's creditkarma.com and creditsesame.com. Those both draw from different reporting agencies, but the thing I like about them is they're both free. It's not like that, freecreditreport.com, or the one that has all the ads that really doesn't never worked out well for me. But the Credit Karma and Credit Sesame both just monitor your score month to month. They'll send you periodic updates, let you know if there are any changes. It'll keep an eye on your credit inquiries and stuff, and they do a really good job. So yeah, those are the two I recommend.
So let's talk about your 2-month trip with you and your girlfriend. I think you said it was 2 months. I think you said 21 flights.
21 flights, 13 countries.
How many miles did the two of you burn on this trip?
All right. So we flew 20,000 miles in the air between all the countries. What we had to pay for these 21 flights per person was about 136,000 miles. And that's across a number of different programs. So the most we paid for any one flight, was 30,000 miles to fly back from Lithuania to my folks' place in Dayton. But the cheapest flight I believe we bought was probably paid 4,500 miles to fly between some Caribbean islands. So it completely varies flight to flight, and we used a number of different mileage currencies. We used American Airlines miles, United miles, British Airways miles. I think those were the main three, but we were able to take kind of we had a very diversified fund of different miles we were able to use for this trip.
And the majority of those miles were accumulated through sign-up bonuses.
Yes. 136,000 miles, which is a lot of miles. Don't get me wrong. But when you have these programs offering 50,000 miles to sign up for a credit card, you take, say, just in 6 months or 10 months or something, you sign up for 3 of these. All of a sudden you have 150,000 miles that you could do something like this as well. It's on the one hand, it's not incredibly easy. You have to do the legwork, figure out what's right for you, and find the offers and find the flights. On the other hand, it's much more attainable than I certainly would have thought before I started this game. And like they say, the proof is in the pudding. I wouldn't have thought this was possible, and yet here I am, just having gotten back from it.
So how long did it take you and your girlfriend to accumulate those miles?
Not long. We kind of. I wish I could give you an exact calendar figure, but the problem is we're just constantly trying to get more airline miles, more hotel points that we can use then in the future. So it wasn't a set start date and end date for this particular trip. Now, that having been said, I think the sort of typical timeline that it would take, say if you were to open up 3 credit cards and get from first applying to it to then getting the miles and booking the flights, probably a few months.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Not too long. I mean, we first started looking about the planning on this in, probably about December 2014. Took our first, and then we left to start the voyage in April. So that was about 4 months in advance. Now, I'd already had some airline miles and hotel points accumulated, but we also made a concerted effort to, open up some new ones, do some transferring, look for where we were going to get good deals, and ended up working out. But yeah, a few months.
That's amazing. So for those wanting to maybe try this, do you have, 1 or 2 or 3 credit cards that you recommend that have good sign-up bonuses?
Yeah, so the ones that I like the best are usually when if you're just looking to fly domestically, the ones that I tend to like the best are either Southwest Airlines, and the reason why I like Southwest, they almost always have a 50,000 point sign-up bonus, which in my mind is sort of the bare minimum that you want to look for when you're signing up for a credit card. And just as a small aside for your viewers, when you're in the airport and, the airlines have their people hustling, oh, come sign up for the credit card here. Most of the time, the offer that you'll see in the airport is not as good as one that you can get online. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, Southwest or American or whoever is only offering, say, a 30,000 point sign-up bonus in the airport. Whereas if you were to go and, say, sit down in the seat right next to them, pull open your computer, and look online, you can probably find the exact same card with a 50,000 point sign-up bonus. So, strong word of caution about signing up for in the airport when you're getting hustled by the salesman there. Anyway, Southwest I really like, partly because large sign-up bonus, partly because they, no fees for bags, and because you can change or cancel any flights that you book without any fees at all. So I like it a lot of times when I, say there's a flight I might be taking 6 months in the future, not 100% sure. A lot of times I'll book it with Southwest points, and then, if I don't end up taking it or if things change, I can change it without any fees. Makes it really, really convenient. The other one that I like a lot is for domestic flights is British Airways, which seems a little strange, but the reason why is British Airways points, and they also do a 50,000 point sign-up bonus, is the way that they do their miles. They don't have these zones that you fly in where, for instance, with American, it costs 25,000 round trip anywhere in the U.S., whether you're flying from New York to L.A. or New York to Boston. It's 25,000 miles round trip regardless. With British Airways, they do a distance-based system depending on how much you cost. So if you're flying less than 650 miles, then it's only 9,000 British Airways points round trip. If you're flying less than, I think it's 1,100 miles, it's only 15,000 round trip. So for a lot of these domestic flights, when you're not flying across the country, it can be really, really good value. For the ones that I recommend for folks who are flying internationally, the one that I like the best is American Airlines. They've got a 50,000 mile card. And the reason why I like it the best, they tend to have really good availability to a lot of places that you'd want to go, whether that's, Latin America, whether that's Europe, even Asia. It's not as good in Asia, but you can get there. The ones, it's also a little bit pricier. It tends to be 65, 70,000 or so to get there. So, you're going to have to do a little bit more legwork. The other one that I like the best is United. They usually have a 55K sign up bonus, and you can get really good flights to Europe and to Asia on United. The one that I usually caution people against is Delta. Their miles, you can get 50,000 miles, even 60,000 sometimes. The problem is that their miles are really don't have much value to them. You have all these miles. I have probably 100,000 Delta miles that I just can't use. I look for flights all the time when I'm going to, Colombia, or even flying to California or wherever, and they're just not good flights available. There aren't really the flights available, or if they are available, they charge a ton of miles for them. So they're just not very valuable at all, especially compared to the other airlines.
Okay. So most of these cards charge annual fees. So I guess sort of a two-part question. Do you eventually cancel the card to avoid the fee? And then if you do you have to wait a certain period of time before signing up to get the sign-up bonus again? Or is it just one and done and you can't ever do it again?
So a complex question, actually, and I'll take it piece by piece. I hate annual fees. I really don't like to pay them. And so almost every card that I sign up for, unless there's a really good reason to, almost every card I sign up for are cards that waive the annual fees in the first year. And most of your cards, like every card that I just listed, with the exception of Southwest, waives the annual fee in the first year. Really great for me, because what I'll do is I will sign up for the card, and then I keep a little spreadsheet, just a really simple Excel document on my computer, and then I'll set myself a calendar reminder for 11 months after I signed up for this card to call the bank. You just take your credit card, call the number on the back of the card, and tell them, look, I've really enjoyed having this card. I've been a great customer, but I noticed that the annual fee is coming up and it's, just a little bit too rich for my blood. Can you waive it for me for the next year? You would be surprised how often that works. How often credit card companies see you as a valuable customer. And remember, they're making profit every time that you swipe your card just from swipe fees from the merchants. So they have a strong interest in keeping you as a customer. A lot of them are more than happy to waive the annual fee for the next year. This happens probably, I'd say, about 50% of the time. If they don't, if they're, say, oh, I'm sorry, we just can't do that, then I'll ask them, okay, can you downgrade me to a no-fee version of the card? A lot of times they'll have the card that costs $89 a year, or they have one that isn't quite as good, doesn't have the same perks, but it also has no annual fee. Most of the time, I'd say about 35-40% of the time, if they don't waive the fee, they'll be able to downgrade me to a no-fee card. And only if they can't waive the fee and don't have a downgraded no-fee card, only then do I tell them, okay, let's go ahead and close the account, rather than me having to pay the annual fee the next year. Because some people really are happy to pay annual fees. They think it's the benefits are worth it, and there's an argument to be made for, in some cases for it. For me personally, I just don't think it's worth it to pay $100 to a credit card company when they don't really tend to offer very many compelling perks or benefits in order to keep the card open. So I almost never pay an annual fee on a credit card. Now, in terms of signing up and being able to get cards multiple times, it varies bank to bank. And the good news is it's still very possible. The bad news is that the banks are clamping down a little bit. For instance, with American Express, it used to be possible to, anytime you sign up for a card, say I sign up for it, 11 months later I close it, then a year after that or so, I can sign up again and get the sign-up bonus a second time. They just, about a year ago or so, changed the rules so that you can only get the sign-up bonus once in your lifetime for any particular card. Now, this is something, that's only going to impact people like myself who are pretty intense into this game, want to get the cards as many times as possible. But who knows if this rule will stay on forever? Maybe it could change down the road. But that varies bank to bank. With Chase, for instance, after you have you can get a sign up bonus again. Chase does, for instance, the United card. if as long as you have not received that sign up bonus in the last, I think it's 18 or 24 months, then you can get it. Then you can sign up and get it a second time. So it varies bank to bank. I usually wait, at least a year and a half, 2 years between cards, but there are so many out there that it's really easy to create this sort of virtuous cycle where you're, applying for one, wait a few months, apply for a different one, and then by the time it's been 2 years, you'll be ready to try to get the Chase United sign-up bonus again. You won't need it anytime sooner than that.
Okay. Do you use any online tools to track all your miles, or do you just do a spreadsheet?
Yeah, I do. The one that I like best is called Award Wallet.
Yeah.
And it's just at awardwallet.com, and it's nice for a few reasons. One, it's just it's a account manager, password manager, so it'll keep all your, or as many as you want them to, all your frequent flyer accounts, all your hotel accounts, not only your numbers, your account numbers and everything, but also your passwords if you want them to store it. So that's really convenient. But the second thing that I like best is that it will keep track of the number of points in each program, and it will tell you if and when those points expire. So, really handy to keep track of it in case, I have a couple thousand, say, points in my Air France account that I don't plan on using anytime soon. So if I'm worried that they might be expiring, then maybe I'll do something in the account to try to get them not to expire. Maybe I'll use them for a magazine subscription, something just to make sure I'm getting at least a little value.
Right. Well, I know you've written a book about all of this, How to Fly for Free, practical tips the airlines don't want you to know. I take it you've basically taken all your best secrets and put it into that book.
Yeah, that I wrote. The reason why I wrote that is because I'd come back from these trips from the Galapagos Islands, from Vietnam, from Bali, wherever, and my friends would always ask me, Scott, how can you travel so often to all these far-flung places? Like, are you secretly a millionaire or something? And I tell them, look, I wouldn't be able to do this. I wouldn't be able to afford to do this if I was paying for all these flights and hotels. I don't have nearly enough money for that. The only reason why I'm able to do this was because I figured out these sorts of tips and tricks for generating all these miles and then using them. And so rather than sort of explaining to each person anew how the system works and what my tactics are, I decided just to compile them in this short ebook. And I wanted to make it really practical for folks, make it so it's much more of a tutorial, hands-on guide for here's how you get the miles, here's how you use them, here's how you get the best value. So that's why I wrote How to Fly for Free. And then I put out a new book just a few months ago called How to Find Cheap Flights. And the purpose of How to Find Cheap Flights was to look at, when in those instances when you're not using frequent flyer miles, when you're paying out of pocket for a flight, what are all the steps that you should take to try to make sure you get the cheapest flight possible? And so, lay out all the steps that I go through for instance, when I flew from New York to Milan in Italy for $65 each way, exactly how I found that flight. When I flew from the U.S. to Belgium for, I think it was $115 each way. Here's exactly where I searched. Here's exactly the types of searches that I ran in order to be able to find those flights. It's I think a bit more practical for because most folks are paying when you get a flight are paying for those out of pocket. And so I figured, these are some tips I think most folks should know about in order so they're not paying full price to the airlines.
Right. Well, I will link to both of those books in the show notes. I noticed that you also have a site, flyforfreeguide.com.
That's right. Yeah. And, just want to lay out, and I've got some sample chapters in there and the table of contents for each book just to show, what you're getting into, links to the books, and then a link to contact me if you have any questions.
So my only concern about your website is that listeners will go to your site, look at it, and then they'll email me and say, Rob, why does your site look so crappy? when Scott's site looks so beautiful? Who designed that for you? It's a great site.
You know, I have to give 100% credit to my brother, actually. He's an incredible web designer. Doesn't even do this as a job. Just in his free time, he enjoys designing sites and yeah, able to do this. So
that's fantastic. Dave. So do you have a day job? I mean, like, do you work? I mean, how do you?
Actually, so I work as a journalist. Okay. I had worked in Washington, D.C. for 4 years, working as a political journalist. And then for the past year, I'd actually been living down in southern Mexico, also working as a journalist down there, freelancing, but then doing other stuff as well, volunteering, teaching English, learning Spanish, on down the line. And yeah, now going to be moving back up to the U.S. and probably going to get back into journalism, but not 100% sure. Still weighing some options.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, I appreciate your time. Before I let you go, I just realized one question I didn't ask you. You mentioned 136,000 miles each for you and your girlfriend for the flights, but I think you said at the top of the show that you stayed in hotels virtually free as well. So how did that happen?
Yeah, so a lot of the same sorts of tactics in terms of almost every hotel chain, Marriott, Hilton, Intercontinental, on down the line, offers credit cards with incredible sign-up bonuses that we would take full advantage of. Not only going the hotel points route, but also they do a lot of promotions. So, for instance, a lot of times Marriott will offer this promotion where for every 2 times that you stay at a Marriott, they'll give you a certificate for a free stay at any Marriott that they have. And so we would be sure to stay, have 2 paid stays at a really cheap rinky-dink Marriott somewhere in the, along our way, but somewhere very cheap, and then use the certificate that we got to stay somewhere really nice, really expensive. So, finding out those little types of hacks to be able to get good value from it. I ended up I think we stayed, about for the 60, we were on the road about 60 days or so. We had about a week and a half at my house in Oaxaca, and then a week and a half at her relative's house in Ukraine. Setting aside those, we had about 40 free nights in hotels that we got from this, and lest you think they were just, roach motels, these were one, I was really blown away by how incredible they were, ones that Barack Obama stayed at, ones that the Queen of England stayed at, ones that, former President Bush had stayed at, all these incredible places that I never thought I would be at in my life, but I was able to get access to from these hotel points. We went back at the end of the trip and calculated out how much, if we had paid out of pocket for all the flights and all the hotels, how much would this have cost? We actually out of pocket paid, about $440 or so. And that's, taxes and fees on all our flights, which are unavoidable. It's just any government levies them to get in or out of the country. And then a couple hotels in places that were more rural that didn't have a chain hotel. So we paid about $440 total. The actual value that we got, which if we had paid out of pocket for all our flights, all our hotels, over $14,000. So it was just remarkable to me. Still boggles my mind that we were able to get so much value out of these points that, we got basically for free.
Well, that's amazing. Do you have plans, or have you already posted pictures from this trip anywhere online?
Yeah, so I like to post pictures mostly on Instagram. My account is Scott M. Keyes. That's Keyes, all one word, at Instagram. And you can find that on the website at flyforfreeguide.com.
Okay, and I'll also post a link to it as well.
Great. Well, I appreciate it.
Well, Scott, hey, I really appreciate your time today. A ton of great tips. And it makes me want to log back into a Ward wallet, which I haven't opened in months, to see how many miles I've got. But hey, really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Great chatting with you.
Well, a big thank you to Scott for taking the time to talk with us today. I hope you enjoyed that interview. A couple of things. First, he mentioned Award Wallet. I've used Award Wallet, and it really is, I think, a great way to track all of your miles, hotel points. It can track your credit card rewards. Some people have that type A personality and everything's organized and they've got it all figured out. That ain't me. And one of the frustrations that I have with the whole miles game is just keeping track of it, where I've earned miles, whether it's from actual flying or credit cards or whatever. And frankly, it's one of the reasons where I kind of just gave up on the whole thing about a year ago and went with the Citi Double Cash card, which is sort of now our main credit card. It gets 2% cash back, 1% when you make the purchase, 1% when you pay for the purchase. Just to kind of simplify my life. But, as Scott pointed out, the miles cards, if used correctly, the miles can be far more valuable. And so it takes a little bit of effort, but you can get big rewards for your time. And again, I think Award Wallet is a huge, huge help. Now, he mentioned them, and these will be in the show notes. Then yes, there will be show notes to this episode because I'm not smart enough to figure out how to publish a podcast without show notes. But actually, they're important in today's episode for a couple of reasons. First of all, you will find a transcript of the show, of the interview. If you want to read the interview, and sometimes it's helpful to find things that you may have heard during the interview, and rather than trying to go back into the audio podcast, I've got the transcript for you to read. The second thing is I'll have links to his books. One, he mentioned them, but one, how to find, well, let me go with the first one. The first one is How to Fly for Free, Practical Tips the Airlines Don't Want You to Know. That was published a couple of years ago, 2012. Then this year he published How to Find Cheap Flights, Practical Tips the Airlines Don't Want You to Know. As he mentioned, sometimes you can't fly for free, or sometimes it may not be worth using your miles for a particular flight. You still want to find the cheapest flight you can. So that's his second book, How to Find Cheap Flights, Practical Tips the Airlines Don't Want You to Know. I'll have links to both of those in the show notes. So I hope you found that helpful. If you have any questions at all, shoot me an email, dr@doughroller.net. Also, if you enjoyed the show, consider supporting it. You can go to doughroller.net/support, and you can, financially support what I'm trying to do here. And if not, though, I understand. And those that are supporting the show, big, big thank you. It really means a lot to me. Hey, hope you have a great day. And remember, the best thing money can buy, it's not free travel, because money doesn't buy free travel. No, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.